Whoops. Whoops. That was a mistake. Wait a second. Online. Double check. Yep, we are online. Okay. All right, everybody. We're going to chant a little bit. Let's see what song we are going to chant today. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, it's raining outside, so that's the drops you hear. Lila haruna pura bapagi Twijamani gora amani jage Wakata samua loila sate Gela nagara braje Tatai, pajalakot Gana tahi, janiraro Primem tala, saranga Ranenu pura vaje Mukuna madava yadava Vadana Bore Nicheni Davache Gelorate Vashacharira Shage Emonodulama Manavakteyo Ayaki Koro Baba Nakeo Ibina Mashile Shoda Tsuta Me Pori Velaje Udita Tabanaoile Asta Dina Galo Boile Asta Tabe Keno Ebe Alazaroe Napajarenoia Rache Jivana Nicha Janazasar Tahanana Kapipada Par Namashaya Kori Yatana Tumi Takala Pana Gashe Jivayara Kalyana Sadana Kao Jagate Ase Madhura Apana rupe Gagane virashe Krishna namashuda Riyapan Juraya Bhakati Vinoda Pran Namavina Kichitunara Namavina Kichuna Ihubara Joda Muvana Mashe Udila Luna Urabapagi Jamane Gora Amani Jade Bagat Samua Loyla Sate Gela Nagara Baje Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Dividanta Samaniti Namaste Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Sesha Shunyavani Jagadi Satarane Shri Krishna Caitatanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Bo Hare Bo Hare Bo Nijai Gaur Bo Hare Bo Hare Bo Hare Bo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalana the Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandagoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagadasami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadeja Tarani. So, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Omagana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Jakshura Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorancia. So, we are going to continue our study of the Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, and we're in a very interesting philosophical part of the Chaitanya Caritamrta. It's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's discussion with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya about the Vedanta, especially Vedanta Sutra. So let's just reiterate a little bit. The Vedanta Sutra was composed by Srila Vyasadeva. The Vedanta Sutra is an amalgamation of all the philosophy in the Upanishads. Got it? Upanishads means you approach the spiritual master or approach your spiritual preceptor and you sit down and humbly accept instruction, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So anyway, that's what an Upanishad is. So the summary of all the main Upanishads is in the Vedanta Sutra. And the Vedanta Sutra is composed of sutras. That's plural. Sutras means many short, pithy statements. And if you don't understand what pithy means, that means very short statements that really have to be unpacked to understand completely. Like the statement in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyasya Yataha. The absolute truth is he or that from which everything comes. How do you understand that? Or Tattva Brahma Yasa, now's the time to look for the absolute truth. So anyway, so therefore, the Acharyas have written many commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra, and those commentaries have been written by our Vaishnava Acharyas, like the Sri Bhasha written by Ramanujacharya. That means the Lakshmi commentary. And also Shankaracharya, who was an impersonalist, who was actually the incarnation of Lord Shiva, who came down to bewilder people. Why? Because he wanted to bring people back to the Vedic literatures when Buddhism was actually all over India. He wanted to drive the Buddhists out of India. So Shankaracharya also wrote his commentary known as the Sarirakya Bhashya, and his commentary is an impersonalistic commentary taking indirect meanings from the shlokas or the aphorisms in the Vedanta Sutra. So this is the commentary that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking to, has accepted or was accepting before he met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he is attempting to teach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the impersonalistic commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, so that Lord Chaitanya will be more fixed in renunciation. Little does he know that the Supreme Lord is completely renounced from this material world. It's one of the opulences of the Lord. There are 6 opulences that Krishna has, and one of them is complete renunciation. So little does he know that. Certainly it's not going to help the Lord's renunciation. So he's trying to teach the Lord the impersonal philosophy or Mayavadi philosophy for 7 days. And actually, we as Vaishnavas have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam, also Govinda Bhasha, which is written by Baladev Vijayabhushana and dictated by Govinda, the deity Govinda, is another commentary. And that's a very interesting story about that commentary. I guess we could tell that story right before class. Once upon a time, there were a bunch of sadhus in Jaipur. Jaipur is where the deity of Radha Govinda, or the deities of Radha Govinda are, because they were taken out of Vrindavan because Vrindavan was attacked by the Muslims. Okay, got it. So, once upon a time, the Ramanandis, who were so-called followers of the Sri Sampradaya, but not really followers of the Sri Sampradaya, they actually said that you should take Radharani away from Radha Govinda. In other words, you should just have Govinda and not Radha, which is not a good idea. Okay, so they said that. And so they did. The king said, all right, you got to follow the advice of my Brahmins. And he did that reluctantly because he was a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So he took Radharani and put her in a separate temple. And when the great Acharya heard about this, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the great Acharya at that time, he got really upset and he sent his disciple follower, Baladev Vijayabhushana, to argue the case. So Baladev Vijayabhushana goes to Jaipur from Vrindavan and he says, well, I'm going to defeat you. And the mature commentary of the Vedanta Sutra is the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you are defeated. But they said, no, we don't accept that. There has to be one that's written by one of your acharyas. And so Baladev Vijayabhushana said, just give me a few days. We'll give you a commentary. So he sat down in front of the Govinda deity, and he said, my dear Govinda, please dictate this commentary. Please give me the intelligence. And Govinda dictated the commentary. And that commentary is known as the Govinda Bhasha, the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra that was spoken by Govinda to his great devotee, Baladev Vijayabhushana, and he defeated the Brahmanandis, and as a result, Radha and Krishna were rejoined together on the altar in Jaipur. Now you may say, how did this happen? How did Krishna allow this pastime to happen? Well, there's an esoteric explanation of this particular pastime, that Krishna and Radha had a lover's quarrel. So you may think this is unusual, the Lord having a lover's quarrel with Radharani. Well, this is part of the Shringara Ras. Shringara Ras and Madhya Ras, relationship of Krishna with the gopis, the Parakya Ras, that some of the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani, are left-handed gopis. That doesn't mean they write with their left hands or they drive a car with their right hands or with left hands. That means they're hot-headed and they talk back to Krishna. And Krishna loves that much more than the gopis who are completely submissive. That's pretty wonderful, isn't it? And so Radha and Krishna, the deities on the altar, had a lover's quarrel, and that's why there were some separations. That's the esoteric reason for why that happened. Now, don't do that in any of the ISKCON temples. Don't say that, like we have the deities, let's say Radhagolokananda here, and one day say, oh, Radhagolokananda are having a quarrel, so let's take Radharani off the altar. Or Radha Gopinath, like you have in Sydney. Or Radha Shyam Sundar, like in Vrindavan. Or Radha Golok Bihari in Suva. Don't do that. This was a specific pastime of Radha Govinda. Anyway, so that's the point. The commentary of the Vedanta Sutra that we accept, the primary one is the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the secondary one is the Govinda Bhasha of Baladev Vijayabhushana. So, let's get back to the story of Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So Lord Chaitanya has just sat for 7 days hearing this nonsense commentary on the Vedanta Sutra that was spoken by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and this commentary was based upon the commentary of the Caritamrta Bhasha, which is not a Vaishnava commentary. In fact, Lord Chaitanya says if someone tries to understand the Caritamrta Bhasha, they will lose their devotion. Wow. Shankaracharya wrote that for a specific mission, but you're not supposed to study it. Anyway, so Lord Chaitanya heard it for 7 days, and he didn't say a word. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, you've been listening for 7 days. Do you understand everything I said? Have you asked me any questions? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I didn't understand anything you said, but I do understand the Vedanta Sutra. The meaning of the sutras is very, very clear. It's like daylight, but you have obfuscated, or forgive me for mispronouncing that word, you have actually clouded the meaning of the words of the Vedanta Sutra by giving an indirect interpretation based upon the interpretation of Shankaracharya. So, then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is shocked. Oh my God, what is this upstart sannyasi speaking back to me? And now we're going to continue reading from this particular point. That's the background to this particular story. Of course, it's all in Jagannath Puri after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has seen Lord Jagannath and has made friends, so to speak, with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is actually doing this out of compassion because he's thinking that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a really young sannyasi. He's 24 years old, very attractive. He's very worried about him keeping sannyas. He wants to instill in him more of a spirit of renunciation, so he's doing this out of love. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we mentioned before, is accepting the love that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is motivated by, and he's not really hearing the words. So this is a point that I made yesterday very, very strongly, that when one approaches the Lord with mixed motives or mixed ideas, the Lord actually sees the good part and ignores the bad part, like in the case of Putana and other personalities like this. So, let's go to the Chaitanya Caritamrta without further ado. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, I was a little late today, so I'm just going to get to the place. Madhya Lila 6, 139. Okay, just give me 1 second. 139. And, all right. Document. And all right. One additional thing, and we are ready to go. Okay, we're ready to roll now. So Veda Puran. Whoops, let me just clear this extra thing on the screen right now. Veda Purane Kahi Brahma Nirupana Se Brahma Brihad Vastu Ishvara Lakshana. All the Vedas in literature that strictly follow the Vedic principles explain that the Supreme Brahman is the absolute truth, the greatest of all, and a feature of the Supreme Lord. This is the operative word. It's a feature of the Supreme Lord. Feature means he's more than the Supreme Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is simply one of his aspects. Because if you just say it is the Supreme Lord or the Supreme Absolute Truth, then you're saying the Supreme Brahman is devoid of something that's extremely important, which is variety and personality. So he's not the Supreme Brahman, or it's not the Supreme Brahman. If the Supreme Brahman doesn't have personality or whatever, variety, then it's not supreme. Understand the logic? The greatest of everything is Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, 15:15, famous verse, Vedaischa savar ahameva vedya. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, it is said, the Absolute Truth is understood in three phases, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan, iti shabdite. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the last word in understanding the Absolute Truth. Brahman. Brahman means the undifferentiated light. Let me see the light. Paramatma is the localized aspect of the Lord in everyone's heart and every atom, and Bhagavan is Krishna in one of his personal expansions, such as Ram, Nrsimha, etc. Sarvaishvarya paripurna swayam Bhagavan tandre nirakara kari taraha vyakyana. Actually, the Supreme Absolute Truth is a person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with all opulences. You are trying to explain him as impersonal and formless. And Prabhupada said that's an offense. Prabhupada described that as like saying about someone that you are dumb, you are deaf, you are blind. You know, all these different things that take away your qualities. Unless you are dumb, blind, and deaf, then it's not an insult. But to say that about the Lord is a big insult. Brahman means Brihatva, the greatest of all. The greatest of all is Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He possesses all potencies and opulence in full. Therefore, the Absolute Truth, the greatest of all, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether one says Brahman or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fact is the same, for they are identical, one and different simultaneously. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Krishna as Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. That's from the 10th chapter, text 12. Although the living entities or material nature are sometimes described as Brahman, Parabrahman, the Supreme, the greatest of all Brahmans, is still Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is full with all opulences, and as such he possesses all riches, all strength, all reputation, all knowledge, all beauty, and all renunciation. This is the nature of Bhagavan, which is described by Parasharara Muni, the father of Srila Vyasadeva. He's the richest guy, he's the strongest guy, he has great reputation, everyone's heard of God, even the atheists. He knows everything, past, present, future, every single atom, molecule, subatomic particle. All beauty, compared to him, no one is beautiful, except for Srimati Radharani. And all renunciation. He is eternally a person and eternally supreme. If one tries to explain the Supreme impersonally, one distorts the real meaning of Brahman. Like Prabhupada said, the real meaning of Brahman is the greatest. So what's the greatest? Greatest is Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Brahman. So that's like reiterating the conception of Brahman. Brahman means the greatest. Supreme means the greatest. Supreme Brahman means the greatest. It's pretty interesting. Nirvishesha tanre kahe ye shruti gana prakrita nishedi kare aprakrita stapana. Let me explain these words. Okay, whenever or wherever there is an impersonal description in the Vedas mean to establish that everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental, free from mundane characteristics. In other words, I'll explain what that means. Prabhupada does too. But that anytime you say that the Lord doesn't have material characteristics, or characteristics, it means he doesn't have material characteristics. So the word for, Oh, okay. The word for impersonal is nirvishesha, which basically means without variety. Just like in Prabhupada's pranam mantra, uh, there's no different categories. So we have what? Namaste, I offer obeisance unto you. Saraswati Devi, oh dear most, or the energy of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Devi, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani. What does that mean? Vani means words. Remember, Vapu means form. Vani means words. Gaura is who? Golden words. So Gaura in this particular context means Lord Chaitanya. The words of Lord Chaitanya, or the instructions of Lord Chaitanya, or the message of Lord Chaitanya. Gauravani Pracharani, the talks like that. Nirvashesha, that means without variety, basically, impersonal. Nirvashesha, and then Shunyavadi. Shunya means zero. So there's two types of rascals that are dealt with in this particular verse, the Pranam Mantra of Prabhupada. Those who are impersonalists and those who are voidists. Voidist means, everything is ultimately void, nothing is real, strawberry fields forever, something like that. Void. Ultimately, nothing exists. Of course, there's different varieties of Buddhist philosophy, none of which were taught by Buddha. Because whenever you hear someone saying, this is Buddhism, it's not Buddhism. 99.99% of the time, because Buddha did not teach that there was no soul. Buddha taught a materialistic philosophy, basically based upon compassion and psychology. And his followers later on turned that into Shunyavadi stuff. Sometimes they misinterpret what he said as Shunyavadi because he said the absolute truth, or the soul is not this, not this, not this. And that was actually propagated by one of his followers called Nagarjuna. Anyway, not going to get into Buddhism today. So Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Paschatya, that means in the West, baby. Dejatarni, that place, those places. So in other words, just put it all together. I offer my obeisances unto the dear most servant of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is preaching or presenting or sharing the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in the Western world, which is filled, and also India, which is filled with impersonalism and voidism. So that's the meaning of this particular verse. And probably goes into further explanation here. There are many impersonal statements about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3:19. Apanipado javano grahita pashyatya chakshu sa shrunotya karnaha saveti vedyam nacha tashyati veta. Actually, that's not. Actually, that was Lord Buddha's. That's Lord Buddha's interpretation. What you put there is not really what Lord Buddha taught. Sorry about that. That's the interpretation that people have of Lord Buddha's teachings. If you read Lord Buddha's teachings in his sermon at Deer Park, you will not find that there. Sorry about that. That's what's taught, not by Buddha, but by people who say they are Buddhists. So please don't present that as Buddhist teachings. So you're misunderstanding there. So saveti vidyam nachata shasti veta tamahura griyam Purusham Mahantam. Although the Supreme Lord is described as having no hands and legs, he nonetheless accepts all sacrificial offerings. He has no eyes, yet he sees everything. He has no ears, yet he hears everything. When it is stated that the Supreme Lord has no hands and legs, one should not think that he is impersonal. Rather, he has no mundane hands and legs like ours. He has no eyes, yet he sees. This means that he does not have mundane, limited eyes like ours. Rather, he has such eyes that he can see past, present, and future everywhere, in every corner of the universe, and in every corner of the heart of every living entity. Thus, the impersonal descriptions in the Vedas intend to deny mundane characteristics in the Supreme Lord. They do not intend to establish the Supreme Lord as impersonal. That's very interesting. So sometimes you'll find these statements, if you take them out of context, you'll have a misunderstanding. It says that the Lord walks and he doesn't have legs. So he doesn't have material legs. He walks and he doesn't walk. And he doesn't have material legs. He doesn't have material mouth. He doesn't have material senses. So you have these statements that negate the material aspects or material understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they do not negate his spiritual identity or spiritual aspects. Yaya Shrutir Jalpati Nirvishesham. There's that word, Nirvishesham again. Sa Sabidate Sa Vishesham Eva Vichara Yoge Sati Hantatasam Prayobaliya Sa Vishesham Eva. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concluded, or continued, whatever Vedic mantras describe the Absolute Truth impersonally only prove in the end that the Absolute Truth is a person. The Supreme Lord is understood in two features, impersonal and personal. If one considers the Supreme Personality of Godhead in both features, one can actually understand the Absolute Truth. He knows that the personal understanding is stronger because he sees that everything is full of variety. No one can see anything that is not full of variety. This is a quotation from the Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka 667 by Kavi Karnapur. So that's quite obvious, quite logical, that if you say something is complete, the highest, Brahman, it must have every aspect, both personal and impersonal. Let's get back to what I said, I think yesterday or the day before. Like some people, impersonalists, they say the Supreme Lord cannot have a personality because a personality is limited. Well, first of all, that's the fault of induction. That means because every personality that you have observed in this world has been limited. So therefore you're coming to the conclusion, therefore every personality is limited. But you have not seen every personality, therefore your logic is faulty. That's the first point. Secondly, the second point in this particular argument is that if you say the Supreme Absolute has no personality, then you're actually denying an aspect of the Supreme Absolute Truth. You're saying the Supreme Absolute Truth is lacking something, and that's like saying the Supreme Absolute Truth is not the Supreme Absolute Truth, because the Supreme Absolute Truth is Janma Jasya Yataha. That's the Vedanta Sutra. What does the Janma Jasya Yataha mean? The Absolute Truth is he or that from which everything comes. So if everything is coming from the Absolute Truth, that's the first lesson in the Vedanta Sutra, then the Absolute Truth must have all the qualities that are there in the emanation, or everything that comes from him. That's what emanation means. He must have all those qualities and more, to an unlimited degree. Think about it. If you say the absolute truth can't have a name, if the absolute truth can't have a personality, the absolute truth can't have a transcendental body, then you're saying the absolute truth is not the absolute truth because he's lacking something. For something or someone to be the absolute truth, that person or thing must have everything that is anywhere else, which means the emanation. Of course, in the Upanishad, we have Om Purnamidam, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and so many complete, perfect units emanate from the perfect and complete Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they are perfect and complete in and of themselves, etc. I know that's not the exact quote, but that's a paraphrase. So, anyway, we have variety here. This material world, according to the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, this material world is what? A reflection of the spiritual world. The comparison given in the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter is that in the reflection of a tree on the banks or on the river, you're standing on the bank of the river, the reflection is upside down. The branches are down and the roots are up. So this is the material world. It's a reflection of the spiritual world. And so what we think of, let me give an example, of course. Sorry for this example, Prabhus. This is, here in America, this is springtime. Springtime means when the birds and the bees and the monkeys, sorry, no monkeys here, but the birds and the bees, they start chirping and people fall in love. Anyway, I'm not going to give a sannyasi's perspective on this. Be very careful. I will be neutral, shanti. So people fall in love. So what is this falling in love? It is a reflection of the spiritual realm of what? The Lord and his devotees, especially the gopis, falling in love. They're always in love, and the difference is in the material world you are falling in love, and once you've fallen in love, then there's no more juice in it, because it's purnat charvita charvananam. It's like falling in love in this material world. It's like taking bubble gum or sugar gum. Anyway, maybe you know what bubble gum is. Maybe in India they don't have bubble gum. I'm not sure. So you keep chewing it. It's great in the beginning. As described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, happiness in the mode of passion is like nectar in the beginning. And then at the end, it is... Anyway, read the Bhagavad Gita. I said I'm not going to give a sannyas class today. So, anyway, so the bubble gum... You chew the bubble gum and no more taste. It's just rubber. It's like chewing a rubber band after a while. That's the enjoyment in this material world. Just like chewing a rubber band in the beginning, there's the promise, and at the end, you got a rubber band in your mouth. So, getting back to... So that's the material world as a reflection. And so, spring. Don't get bewildered by springtime. And don't get bewildered by winter. We have some people get bewildered by winter, and they get depressed during the winter. It's called sad. What does sad mean? Seasonal affective depression. And sometimes, anyway, the material world is like that. It's sukha and dukkha, sukha and dukkha. That means happiness, distress, happiness, distress, happiness, distress. So, anyway, I've decided to always be happy. That's been my decision in life. Sorry about that. So, maybe we should go back to this verse. Yeah, so no one can see anything that is not full of variety. So the material world is full of variety. So therefore, the spiritual world must be full of variety. Brahmahaite janma vishva Rameti jivaya se brahme punarapi hayayalaya Everything in the cosmic manifestation emanates from the absolute truth, remains in the absolute truth, and after annihilation again enters the absolute truth. This is actually one of the nutshell verses. Not this verse, but it's the Aham Vasudeva Gre Nanyat Sadasad Puram Paschadaham Shad Yo Shasheta Soshmiham. This is one, actually, maybe probably quotes this in the purport, I'm not sure. But it's one of the nutshell verses in the Bhagavatam. Before the creation, there was I. During the creation, there is I, the Supreme Personality of God. God is talking. And after the creation, there's I. Everything in the cosmic manifestation, a little bit different, emanates from the absolute truth, remains in the absolute truth, and after annihilation, again enters the absolute truth. In the Caitatanya Upanishad 3.1, it is said, Yato va imani bhutani jayante. The entire material cosmic manifestation is born of the Supreme Brahman. Also, the Brahma Sutra begins with the verse, Janma Dyasya Yataha, which is what I just quoted, 111. The absolute truth is that from which or whom everything emanates. 112. That absolute truth is Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, 10th canto, 10th chapter, text 8. This is one of the nutshell verses, the first one. Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhu matak sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from me. Therefore, Krishna is the supreme, or is the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of God. Again, Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, text 4, Mayatatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina, that by me and my unmanifest form, that means Krishna's energy, the entire universe is pervaded. And as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita in the 5th chapter, text 37, Goloka ibnivashatiyaki alatma bhutaha. Although it means actually the Lord never leaves Vrindavan. Although the Lord always stays in his abode, Goloka Vrindavan, he is still all-pervading. His all-pervasive features understood to be impersonal because one does not find the form of the Lord in that all-pervasiveness. Actually, everything is resting on the rays of his bodily effulgence. The Brahma Samhita 540 also states, Yasha Prabha Pravato Jagadanda Koti Kotishvashesha Vasudari Vibhuti Binam. Due to the rays of the Lord's bodily effulgence, millions of universes are created just as planets are created from the sun. All right, let's read maybe one or two more verses. Apadana Karana Adikarana Karakatina Bhagavanera Savishesha Etina China. The personal features of the Supreme Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are categorized in three cases, namely ablative, instrumental, and locative. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states in his Amrita Prabha Bhasha that according to the injunction of the Upanishads, the Supreme Absolute Truth is He from whom everything emanates. It is understood that the whole cosmic manifestation emanated from Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth. The creation subsists by the energy of the Supreme Brahman, and after annihilation merges into the Supreme Brahman. From this we can understand that the Absolute Truth can be categorized in three cases, ablative, instrumental, and locative. According to these three cases, the Absolute Truth is positively personified, means who he is. First of all, this, who he is, what he does, and where he's located. So that's what the three words mean. Is positively personified. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes the Akireya Upanishad 111, Atmavaidam ekaivagra asin nanyat kinchana mishat sa ikshata lokan nushrishayati. Similarly, in the Shvetashvata Upanishad 4.9, it is stated, Chandamsi yajna kritavo vritani bhutam bhavyam yach Javeda Vadanti Yasman Mayi Srijate Vishwam Metat Tasminshjanyo Mayaya Sanirudaha. And in the Caitatanya Upanishad 3:1, Yato Vayamani, Bhutani Jayanta Yena Yatani Jivanti, Yat Prayant, Yabi Samvishanti, and Vigya Sashva Tad Brahmiti. This was the answer given by Father Varuna when questioned by his son Varuni Brigu about the Absolute Truth. In this mantra, the word Yata, the Absolute Truth, from which the cosmic manifestation has emanated, is in the ablative case, that is, Brahman, by which this universal creation is maintained, is in the instrumental case, from which, these are just like different cases of language, in which the universal creation, whoops, I think I have a bug on me, hold on a second. Okay. That Brahman by which this universal creation is maintained is in the instrumental case, and that Brahman into which the whole cosmic manifestation merges is in the locative case. Yat or Yasmin. As it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.20, Idam hi vishwam bhagavan nivetaro yato jagatstana niroda sambhava. The entire universal creation is contained in the gigantic form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything emanates from Him. Everything rests in His energy, and after annihilation, everything merges into His person. I know it's a lot of philosophy there. But basically, Krishna is the source of everything. Just to summarize it, Krishna is the source of everything. He remains in the spiritual world. He creates by his expansions, such as the Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. And he emanates all these different energies, including the material energy, the Jiva soul, and also his Shaktis. They're all his emanations. So Krishna is the source of everything. Every single energy comes from Krishna, and every single expansion, Vishnu Tattva, expansion of God, comes from Krishna. All right. Oh, phew. Up to 144. Let me just... 139, 144. Okay. Okay, so let's take questions now. Let me stop sharing. I think there was a tick on me that I just picked off. Ticks can be very dangerous. All right, so let's hold on a second. Let's unmute you. Whoops, it's not working. Hold on a second. Now it's working. Okay, who has a question? You are officially unmuted.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Haribol by Caitatanya.
Hare
Good to see
Krishna,
you.
please accept my humble obeisances.
Haji. Huh?
So you have a question?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, please. If I may,
I don't know. तुम कैसे उठा कर रहा है?
Let me. I just had to mute someone else. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just asking in relation to Lord Buddha. I understand that he came to preach away from the Vedas and all that, but did he actually preach that there is no God and that there's no Supreme Lord? And,
no, he never said that.
Hey, Arifi, खोल के देखो तो.
That was Sumuk keeps taking himself off of
all right.
Sorry, he just interfered. So no, I mean that's a common misunderstanding many devotees have. He preached to the atheists, but he never denied the existence of God. He said the absolute truth, he uses sort of nomenclature, the absolute truth is not this, and not that. And he also preached the himsa. Prabhupada said that his main teaching was nonviolence, himsa paramo dharma. That was what Prabhupada said. But you do not find in any of his direct teachings, because there are actually some really good transcriptions even of what Buddha said. Particularly, there's one sermon called the Sermon at Deer Park. You can actually, I think you can look it up online. Let me just see if I can find it. Sermon at Deer Park. And I think you could, it's Buddha's first sermon. Here it is. It's really a cool sermon. And he, what he talks about there is not about God at all. He does not deny the existence of God. Now, the way that Buddhists, this is really cool. I mean, actually, maybe I'll even share this for all of you so you can see. This, I think this would be interesting for everyone to see the sermon at Deer Park. Just give me 1 second. I'll share the screen again. Now, it's in real small text. I'm going to try to magnify it so you can see it. But you won't be able to see it that well. Anyway, this is the sermon in Deer Park. Whoops. Here it is. So what he's saying here, just to give you a brief overview, he's saying take the middle path, is what he's saying in the beginning here, which is really interesting. See, there's a middle path. Then he's talking about suffering. Then he talks about, anyway, I'll go back to the other thing, because I pretty much know this sermon. So then he talks about taking the middle path because he tried the extremes when he first did his austerity. First he tried extreme mortification. Well, anyway, he was born as a prince, Prince Siddhartha. And he had all the sense gratification you can imagine. And then he went to the opposite extreme and he almost died. Then he came to the conclusion you take the middle path, which is exactly what Krishna says in the Gita. Mityahara viharasha, take the middle path. You know, don't eat too much, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little, don't eat too little, etc. like that. And so then, that's the first point in his sermon at Deer Park. And then he talks about how this material world is suffering. Then he talks about how suffering is caused by attachment. Let's see if I get this right. Suffering is caused by attachment, and if you give up the attachment, you'll stop suffering. And then he talks about how the methodology of giving up the attachment is it's sort of like a psychological method or a prescription of lifestyle, like be nonviolent, etc. What's called the Eightfold Path. There's the Four Noble Truths. See from the sermon at Deer Park, one can extract the Four Noble Truths, which is material world is suffering. Suffering is caused by attachment. Give up the attachment, the suffering goes away. And four, if you follow the path, the Buddhist path, then you can actually give up the attachment and the suffering. And then there's the Eightfold Buddhist path, which is right living, right thinking, etc. So if you're interested in Buddha's teachings, you can actually, his real teachings, not what's taught by the Buddhists, whether they're the Zen Buddhists or Mahayana Buddhists or the whatever type of Hinayana Buddhists, then you can just read the sermon at Deer Park. Because there's actually, it's really sweet sermon, and it really doesn't decry the existence of God. That's a misunderstanding most devotees have. The Buddha never said there was no God. He just said God is not part of this world. And he also said the world is suffering. And he never really got into metaphysics that much. Metaphysics means describing, let's say, reincarnation. That's sort of metaphysical. Or describing things that go beyond. Metaphysics means to go beyond the physical. So, but his followers, they changed or added to what he taught. And if you study Buddhism, you'll see exactly what happened. And so what's taught in the name of Buddhism today to people is not actually what Buddha taught, or at least it's a lot more than what Buddha taught. Okay?
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. I'll look that up. Thank you.
Yeah, you can look it up. I mean, just
Yeah.
all you have to do, I mean, I can even send you the link for the sermon at Deer Park right now. I'll just post it there.
Thank you. Yes, that'll be great.
This is from, this is actually a reputable link. It's from Columbia University, which is a great university. I actually got accepted. I got accepted at Columbia.
There you go.
When I was a child, when I was 17. But I didn't go to Columbia. I went to Northwestern University, but I could have gone to Columbia. I was accepted at Columbia. I should have gone to Columbia because that's in the middle of New York City. So if any of you are interested, you could copy that link, and that has the Buddha's first sermon, which is called the famous Sermon at Deer Park. If you're interested.
Thank you,
Maharaj. Okay. All right, thank you. So who else wants to ask a question?
Gurudev, I have one small question.
Yes, Mr. Mook.
Gurudev, we have learned all this while when I am in ISKCON that we don't break Tulsi on Dwadasi. Our understanding is, because I've learned from the devotees, that because Tulsi Devi fasts on Ekadasi, so she's weak on Dwadasi. And usually we see all devotees tries to break the Tulsi in the afternoon just before 6 p.m. And my question is, since Tulsi Devi is fasting on Ekadasi, shouldn't we not be breaking Tulsi on Ekadasi as well?
I think you'll have to you'll have to ask someone who's more ritualistic than me about these things. Yeah, I think maybe you just write to Mother Urmila or something about this. You know, it's not. I would just be speculating about why we don't do it on Ekadasi or Dwadasi or whether Tulsi fast, because we still water Tulsi Devi and take care of her on Ekadasi. And Tulsi Devi doesn't eat grains anyway. I mean, whoever heard of a plant eating grains? So, anyway, that's a question, one of these questions that are just like beyond my pay grade. You have to ask one of the Brajabasis that question.
Okay. And one other thing, Gurudev, I heard that all the trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, but Tulsi breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. Is it true?
You have to ask Tulsi Devi that. I don't. You're saying that Tulsi Devi breathes in oxygen and breathes out carbon dioxide?
Yes, that's the question I'm asking.
I never heard that. So maybe next time you go to see Tulsi Devi, you could bring a carbon dioxide detector or something like that. Interesting. Got all these
no, that's all speculation. Maybe I heard it.
Esoteric questions, you know, really interesting question. Don't feed Tulsi Devi grains on Ekadasi. Okay, I'll remember that one. All right. Any other questions?
No, that's all.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. All glories to you. I do not pronounce to you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Okay,
Gurudev, about picking Tulsi Devi, just logical development that I have come to is sometimes there is this mixed tithi of Ekadashi and Dwadashi, and we are not able to ascertain the exact timings. So that is why, for precaution, I don't pick on Ekadashi and Dwadashi. So I pick extra on the day before Ekadashi, just to suffice for the next 2-3 days.
And actually, if you look in the in some of the Vaishnava literatures, like the Hari Bhakti Vilas, it gives all sorts of other days when to pick and when not to pick Tulsi Devi. There's certain days of the week when you're not supposed to pick Tulsi Devi. There's certain phases of the moon, other than Ekadasi and Dwadasi, when you're not supposed to pick. So it gets a little complicated. And we don't follow all those different restrictions. But yes, I would not pick Tulsi Devi on Dwadasi or Mahadwadasi, because you're not. That's one of the real important ones.
Yes.
Okay, here's a.
Then Srila Prabhupada has been so merciful, Srila Gurudev, that he has given us these mantras to pick Tulsi Devi, and then the forgiveness mantras, if in case we have committed any, sins in picking, offenses in picking Tulsi Devi or anything doing the seva, then we can chant those mantras as well. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada for giving us all the protection as well. In this age of Kali Yuga, as it is so difficult sometimes, as I said, there's mixed tithi, we don't know which hours, what minutes, what, when to pick, when not to pick, and it becomes a bit confusing. So all glories to you and Srila Prabhupada.
Very nice. Thank you very much for that. Okay, here's another question that was online. What purpose of the different Vedanta Sutra were supposed to fulfill when it's understood that Kali Yuga people were less intelligent, while Vedanta Sutra was written in not secret language, but very pithy language, just compact. Vyasadeva Srimad Bhagavatam is good enough to understand. Why is the Vedanta Sutra there? So that our acharyas could write commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra. And so we could actually see the source of our commentaries. Because otherwise, if you didn't have the Vedanta Sutra as the source, if you didn't have the Upanishads as the source of the Vedanta Sutra, you wouldn't be able to trace out the source of knowledge. So it's really important to have a whole historical perspective. And our acharyas in this way are able to present to us something which we can understand, rather than studying the Vedanta Sutra directly, which we can understand properly. That's the question there. So, all right, next question. Do some Buddhists eat meat? So-called Buddhists, yes. A real Buddhist would not. A real Buddhist who followed what Lord Buddha taught would not eat meat. However, some Buddhists say that you can go begging, and whatever someone gives you, even if it's meat, you can eat it as long as you get it begging. Other Buddhists will eat meat. It's like in Nepal, for example, there's certain Hindus who slaughter buffalo. They have this whole buffalo sacrifice that they do, and they're Hindus. So the point is that the original teachings of practically every acharya have been perverted through the ages. So those who call themselves Buddhists, 99.99% of them are not following Buddha. But there's a trick. They worship a statue or a deity of Buddha, and they're sort of tricked to worship an incarnation of God. But actually, they're not following his directions. It's all just concoction. Now you see this. Krishna even says in the Gita that in the beginning he taught the Bhagavad Gita to Vivaswan taught to Manu taught it to Ikshvaku. Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyam Vivaswan Manabe Praha. Manu or Ikshvakabe Bravit, and it was passed down through the cyclic succession. Evam Param Para Praptam, Imam Rajashayo Vidahu. But then Yoganashta. In time it was broken. So the cyclic succession got broken. That's why Krishna had to speak the Bhagavad Gita again. So any pure knowledge after some time becomes broken in this material world. So it's our business in the Krishna conscious movement to try to keep Prabhupada's teachings together as long as possible. But after some time, these teachings will be forgotten, and then people in the name of Prabhupada will be doing things that have nothing to do with what Prabhupada taught. That's life. Welcome to the material world. And you're all welcome to be here.
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Yeah. It's time to bump ahead.
Okay.
Well, you ask your questions tomorrow, okay?
Okay, Gurudev.
Because it's actually late.
Okay.
Okay. Goodbye.